The champagne flute felt cool in my hand, a small anchor in a sea of polished conversation. My brother Derek's engagement party buzzed around me, a symphony of clinking glasses and status updates. His fiancée Vanessa's mother, Patricia, appraised me with a thin, social smile. "So, Emma, what do you do?" she inquired, her tone already suggesting the answer was irrelevant. "I work in tech consulting," I replied, keeping it simple. Her eyebrows arched. "Oh, consulting. So you're like a contractor?" Before I could clarify, Vanessa materialized, her laugh a sharp, carrying peal. "Wait, consulting? Like freelance assistant type stuff?" Heads turned. I offered a placid smile. "Something like that." The dismissal was complete, a familiar script in the family play where I was the quiet, overlooked sister. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 28, and for years I have been the strategic, unflashy counterpoint to my charismatic brother, Derek. While his promotions in corporate sales were dinner table trophies, I quietly built an empire. At 24, I founded Catalyst Solutions, a tech consulting firm specializing in corporate restructuring. By 27, I led a team of 40 with major corporate clients. I operated under my middle initial, E.L. Carter, and stayed off the radar, letting my work speak. To my family, I was just into computers, barely getting by. They had no idea I owned the game they were so desperately trying to win. The assumptions were a constant hum in the background of our interactions. My parents, well-meaning but blind, would praise Derek's new car or bonus, then turn to me with a pat on the shoulder and a vague, "We're glad you're doing whatever it is you enjoy, dear." I stopped correcting them. The energy required to dismantle their preconceptions was better spent on my growing business. I poured myself into building a reputation for excellence and discretion in an industry that thrived on both. My clients knew me by my results, not my pedigree, and that was a freedom I learned to cherish. It built a quiet confidence that no family gathering could shake, even as the slights continued. This separation was intentional. I watched the way they fawned over Derek's achievements, which were always loudly announced and lavishly celebrated. There was a performative quality to their pride that made my skin crawl. I realized early on that my ambition was of a different kind. I wasn't building for applause or a seat at the head of the table during holiday dinners. I was building for impact, for security, and for the deep personal satisfaction of creating something lasting from nothing but my own intellect and will. Each time they misunderstood my career, I deposited a little more of my self-worth into an internal account they couldn't access, one that paid dividends in resilience. I also saw how Vanessa's family operated, a hierarchy based on titles, connections, and conspicuous consumption. To them, value was always external, something to be displayed and verified by others. My entire philosophy was the antithesis of theirs, and it was this fundamental disconnect that made their eventual realization all the more jarring. The slights piled up like unopened bills. There was the wedding planning brunch I wasn't invited to, just for the bridesmaids, my mother explained lamely. At a family dinner, Vanessa's brother Ryan, freshly promoted in finance, smirked as he asked about my freelance thing and lack of benefits. Derek chuckled. Emma's not really the corporate type. The most cutting moment came when, trapped in a restaurant bathroom stall, I overheard Vanessa console her mother. "I feel bad for her." Patricia's reply was a dagger. "Well, not everyone can be a go-getter." I stood there, silent and furious, my success a secret I clutched like a weapon. The final straw was Vanessa's assumption that my flexible schedule meant I was free to run her wedding errands, assembling favors while her friends joked I probably needed the distraction. I agreed, not out of kindness, but because I was biding my time. The irony was exquisite. Unbeknownst to them, Derek's logistics firm was a client of Catalyst Solutions, and Vanessa's own employer, a consulting competitor, had just been acquired by a partner company, a merger now under my firm's management. The contracts were signed by my COO. They were literally working for me. I had known about the parallel contracts for months, watching with a sense of surreal detachment as Derek complained about the demanding new consultants and Vanessa fretted about her firm's hostile takeover. I said nothing, observing how they praised ambition in the abstract but mocked its quiet, practical form when it sat across from them at the dinner table. It was a fascinating study in cognitive dissonance, and I was its anonymous architect. In a particularly ironic twist, Derek had once ranted about the firm's CEO being a ruthless genius he hoped to impress. He was trying to climb a ladder that led directly to my office door. He was aspiring to the approval of the very person whose potential he had spent a lifetime failing to recognize in his own home. The revelation didn't come from a grand confrontational speech. It arrived in their corporate inboxes. As the merger and restructuring processes finalized, company-wide emails went out with the new leadership structure. At the top of both lists was the same name and headshot, Emma L. Carter, founder and CEO. The family group chat exploded. Derek's private text was a panicked, "Is this a joke?" My mother's call was breathless. "Sweetheart, is that you?" My reply was simple. "Yes, you never asked." A forced emergency family dinner was convened, thick with tension. Derek was bewildered. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I did," I stated calmly. "I said I worked in tech consulting. You chose to hear freelance assistant." Vanessa, flustered, accused me of letting them think I was struggling. "No," I corrected. "You assumed. I never confirmed." When Patricia tried to pivot with hollow praise, I didn't let her. "You called me a gig worker in a bathroom. You said not everyone can be a go-getter." Her color drained from her face. I turned to my brother. "You stood there while they mocked me. You laughed. You never defended me, not once." The room fell silent under the weight of their own condescension, now reflected back at them with the glaring light of truth. I didn't go to the wedding. I had already given them enough of my time. The fallout was a quiet, personal restructuring. My parents, visiting my office for the first time, finally saw the scale of what I'd built and offered belated, tearful apologies I accepted with new boundaries firmly in place. Derek eventually apologized, but our relationship is now cordial, stripped of its old dynamics. Vanessa still works under my firm's management, a professional, distant arrangement. The greatest shift, however, was internal. I used to ache for their recognition, to be seen as an equal to Derek in their eyes, but in shielding my success, I had built something for myself alone, and its value became immutable, independent of their approval. Their mockery was meant to diminish me, but it only fueled the quiet engine of my resolve. In the end, I didn't need to scream my achievements from the rooftops. A single email signature did the job, proving that the most powerful move is often played in silence, long before the checkmate is ever seen. The experience taught me that sometimes the most profound validation comes not from the applause of others, but from the quiet satisfaction of knowing your own worth, especially when those who should have seen it were too busy looking elsewhere. Their shock was not my victory, my peace was. I had learned to be my own witness, and in doing so, I had rendered their judgment, whether dismissive or odd, ultimately powerless. In the months that followed, something unexpected happened. I stopped measuring my days by their acknowledgement. The compulsion to check the family group chat faded. I no longer braced myself before family gatherings, anticipating the next casual dismissal or well-intentioned slight. Instead, I found myself arriving fully present, not as the overlooked sister seeking validation, but as a woman who had already received it from the only source that truly mattered, herself. I began to enjoy the irony of it all, how their ignorance had been a gift, forcing me to build my confidence on a foundation that could not be shaken by their praise or criticism. I started taking on projects that genuinely excited me, expanding my firm into sustainable tech initiatives and pro bono consulting for nonprofits. I mentored young women entering the industry, seeing in them the same quiet determination I had once cultivated in isolation. My identity was no longer a secret to be guarded or a revelation to be timed. It simply was, and its existence no longer required their validation or even their comprehension. I finally stopped waiting for them to see me and started seeing myself clearly for the first time. And in that clarity, I found not bitterness, but an unexpected quiet gratitude, not for their mockery, but for the strength it had forced me to discover within myself.